afternoon tea, specifically. This, I am drinking iced green tea out of my blue box tumbler because I'm just a cool cat. There's like probably only 2 of these in existence, maybe 3, and I have one of them, and I'm just very cool. Shenanigans ensue. Oh, yes. So, essentially, my stream, for those of you who don't know. Okay, first off, my name is Lee. She, her vibes today, but here they is fine. I did my eyeliner. I think it looks pretty cool. This eye's a little off. Like, it came off. Or maybe this eye just got overdone. I don't know. Eyeliner. What else? Oh, yes. My name is Lee. I run character creation streams for both Pathfinder 1st Edition and Warhammer 40k, depending on day of the week, usually. I've set into a pattern where I do Warhammer 40k on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and today's Tuesday, so we're doing Warhammer 40k. The only exception, kinda, to this is on Thursday, this Thursday I'm doing the night stream. So, essentially, I'm going to be streaming at, say, midnight, which means it'll go over into Friday a little bit. I have this and this. These are my 2 most important world building tools. Sorry. Because if I don't write things down, I will inevitably forget, and then I will have lost cool ideas I have. So, there's that. So, what I've been doing for the Warhammer 40k, I do character creation and world building, usually. Although this Saturday, I'm going to start something completely new and have a cool showdown. And next Saturday as well. The Saturday after that, I can definitely do a Warhammer 40k themed one, actually, if I... depending on what I want to do with that. But essentially, let's see, Odette. I think, yes. So there's the Experius Piranus. Actually, I have a whole list of notes on the Experius Piranus. It is a rogue trader ship, a sword class frigate. I have the stats here. And what I've been doing is completely randomly rolling. I probably should explain a little bit. Also, say hi in the chat. I love it when people say hi in the chat. I really like the engagement. Of course, you don't have to, but I do really like hearing what people have to say and just how keep me on task. Let me go to here temporarily. So, I have the dice cam, as you see, the shiny click-clack math rocks, and I'm going to turn that off for half a second, just so I can bring up this. So, that is Rogue Trader. Now, it is the Warhammer 40k roleplay. It was part of a series made by Fantasy Flight Games in the early 2010s. They lost the license to print the games in 2017 because of a falling out with the companies. Apparently, it was, peaceful, no hard feelings on either side. I don't know how much of that is corporate PR and how much of that is actually true, but Fantasy Flight Games no longer publishes Warhammer 40k roleplay, which is kind of sad, but the books are still out there, presumably, and you can get copies through certain means. And, yeah, I happen to have a copy. I have a PDF copy. The physical copies are kind of collector's items and rather expensive. So, what I have is a PDF copy. That's the cover art for it that I have up on the screen. And I have been, so for character creation, for Rogue Traders, for those of you who know Warhammer 40k, the Rogue Traders are Imperial scouts sent ahead of the Imperium of Man to explore unknown spaces and basically have free pass to break or bend any laws they want, have a lot of leeway and power and prestige, and the only way to become a rogue trader is to get a warrant of trade, which you have to either inherit or do some great service for the Emperor or the Imperium in some way. But what they have is this handy-dandy chart. Because rogue traders are so powerful, this kind of puts a built-in, it starts with what homeworld you're from, and then what you grew up into, why you ended up in the void space traveling, which is not something a lot of people in the Imperium do, and then a built-in tragic backstory, what's your main motivating force, and then finally comes the career path, which is basically a class. If you play anything like Pathfinder or D&D, career path is what kind of training you have, what kind of special perks you get, what kind of skills and talents you can learn, etc. The idea is that you go in a contiguous path. So either you start from what career path you want to go, or you start from your character's home planet, and then as you head your way down, you pick one from each row, and the one you pick on the row below has to be either the one directly below the one you picked, or above if you're going up. On the next row has to be either directly in line with the one you picked on the row before, or directly to the left or right of that one. So, for example, if you were going down and say Hive World, okay, that gives you 3 options for birthright: subject, a child of the creed, or savant. And then if you pick savant, then you have 3 options: chosen by destiny, a zealot, or duty bound. And then you would pick, if you pick duty bound, you would have 3, like Calamity, Shiplorn, Dark Voyage, and then if you pick Dark Voyage, you would have Pride, Prestige, and Renown, and then you would end up with, if you picked, say, Pride, you would have 3 options for career path, which would be mercenary, a seneschal or a navigator. Missionary, that's the one. Missionary, seneschal, or navigator. Sorry, I can't quite read it on my screen, but I do know them. So you got those 3 to pick from. It would be like that. You narrow your options as you go down. Now, because I love, as you saw earlier, shiny click-clack math rocks and randomness, I've been creating these characters that I do for Rogue Traders randomly by rolling. I start with a d6, and then I go for fudge die. That gives me d3, essentially. So start with a d6 for the home world, and then go d3, or evens odds, depending on if you go to the edge or not, for where they go in the way down. So, so far we have 4 crew members that I have created for this ship. We have Harmon, Zyle, Odette, and Janthine. Odette and Janthine being straight women, and Zyle and Harmon being straight guys. Actually, they're not coupled up or anything, but I do have, I'm very proud of this chart, so I like to show it off at least once. A roll for sex and gender. So I tended to roll on that. But yeah, as I've been going through that, I've created that. And for world building, so I obviously have to create at least one character with the Rogue Trader career path to be the captain. And although I had played games of Rogue Trader where you have someone who has a warrant of trade whose career path is not Rogue Trader, which is kind of an interesting take on things. But that's just the game fell apart because scheduling, which is a shame. I do play occasionally with certain groups. In any event, so I rolled randomly to determine home starting worlds. We started with the Odette. Janthine was from a Hive world, so I created Visseria, which is her home planet. And then it's actually wild how the probability worked out on this one. When I was rolling for Harmon, I rolled randomly, or at least I'd like to think my dice aren't weighted, but and I got exactly the same, including Renegade. There's 3 for each Lure of the Void. There are 3 subcategories. I rolled for those too. And he got, let me think. Let me look back at my notes for Janthine. No, serious. Yes, here we go. Fortune, yeah, explored her. So I got 2 different career paths. Ended up with 2 different career paths for them, and I was baffled slightly because it was how, not that I got 2 different career paths. I mean that's as randomized the rest, but how close it came. It was incredibly uncouth, but that's part of the randomness. Is sometimes things just align. If you roll 12d6s, sometimes you get all 6s. That's a possibility. If you roll for stats with 3d6, sometimes you get 18. Like that's part of randomness. So highly improbable things do occur. So I was like, well, we know, I kind of had come up with a backstory for Janthine, and I was thinking that Harmon had a similar backstory, but they got, and the built-in tragic backstory was that they were both press ganged. It was like, they were press ganged by different people, and that's where their paths split. So that seemed to be my experience for that. But what I was going to do today for world building, because I'm starting to piece together, and that's how Harmon ended up on a death ship, and then when the Explorador, they both ended up on the Experius Primus, after they were rescued from their fight with the orcs, the freebooters. They were then transferred to a rogue trader ship who rescued them, and that rogue trader ship was a relic of the past, because I also rolled for that, with some technology from very ancient human technology that the Mechanicus want to keep an eye on. Also, if you have any questions, like I know not everyone is as familiar with the world of of Warhammer 40k as I am. I am a lore freak, and I got into the world because the lore was just... That's why I was so excited when I found out Rogue Trader was a thing, was because I love the lore. I never really liked tabletop strategy. Like, I did buy some Catachan soldiers. No, it was Cadians, because that's what they had. And when I went to find... I had a couple Cadians that I put together. I put, like, 4 Cadian troopers with flamethrowers and a sergeant. But I never really liked the idea of the strategy game. I always was more interested in the story. That's my place as a storyteller. And I loved Warhammer 40k lore because it just was so impressive. I mean, they had to do all sorts of... to make all these different factions that all could possibly fight each other, all had reason to fight or ally against others. Just... I love the lore. It was just fascinating. So, when I knew that there was a real RPG that just kind of... I was like, I kind of want to... I mentioned on a forum that I kind of want to run like, D&D or Starfighter or something, but set it in the Warhammer 40k universe, and someone's like, that's already a thing, right? They mentioned, I think, Death Guard, I believe, is the Space Marine one. But I realized that there were others, that this wasn't the only one, and Rogue Trader was the one that was most interesting to me, so I started reading up on it, I started playing, I got a couple of my friends to go and start playing, and I've been doing this stream with the character creation. But my point in all of that is that if some of you aren't familiar, you're more familiar with other tabletop RPGs, you're not sure on the Warhammer 40k universe, ask me questions. Because it's a lot of lore to just dump. I tried to get a couple other friends who'd never heard of Warhammer 40k to play, and they kind of got eyes glazed over because of the lore dump, and I realized that it was a little much. So I'm trying not to lore dump on the stream too much, especially if other people are more familiar with it. But if you have any questions about Warhammer 40k, let me know. in the chat because I really like answering questions. I like when people talk in the chat. You don't have to. I mean, I don't want to pressure anyone into talking. But if you happen to be curious, that's what you do. Okay. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yes. So, we had all of them. Now, who we also had was Zio, who was the other arch-militant. So we had Odette as an arch-militant who had come from this ship and had fought the orcs, and as part of the... Hang on. I have a note for that one. Sirius Pacaris. All of my ship names, a lot of them come from suggestions in the chat as well. So, there's that. But, this area, I think, came from a suggestion from someone else on the forum. I do like taking suggestions for names of things. Yeah, so, there's that. Oh, very cool. Sorry. So, my other archmilitant, so one of the archmilitants was Odette. The other archmilitant was Zio. He came from a death world, grew up as a scavenger. He was insane. Yeah, he had a mental thing. What else do we have? Oh no, it was Odette who had the toxic blood. Was always kind of an outcast because she had the toxic blood as her mutation. Sorry, I do tend to lose focus. So Odette had toxic blood. I don't know if you're familiar with the mutation table, but she had a mutation. She'd been hiding that. Zyle was not mutated. He was simply mentally... but he did end up getting press ganged, and now he's an arch-militant, and he came from a death world, essentially, and he was kind of pushed forward when they were recruiting for the recruiting, I would say, more likely for the Adeptus Militarum. I know. What was I explaining? Okay. So, I was gonna try to put together a death world where, a young man might grow up as a scavenger, and because of having, interesting. Okay, I have my little streaming buddy next to me. I have a fish. For those of you who don't know, I have a fish named McVenner who kind of sits next to me when I stream. And I sometimes get distracted because he's very adorable. McVenner, yes, is named after the Gaunt's Ghost character. He is, because he's quiet. It's a vibe. He's getting bigger too. He's doing well with himself, for himself, and I'm glad. Um, uh, so I realized I should have gotten all this done before the stream, but I was going to do Xyl's homeworld. So I'm thinking it's a death world, right? Let me, what I can do. I like to read from the Rogue Trader because the Rogue Trader, the Rogue Trader core rulebook it's written with the same, a very similar prose style to a lot of Warhammer 40k stuff, and it's just really, it's very stylistic, but it's fun to read, and I do tend to enjoy it. So let's see. Homeworld. Let's see. Death World. Death worlds are teeming with threats to survival, meaning that those who thrive on such planets are unlike anyone else. Peril and violence have always been a part of your life, and you are stronger because of it. You are aggressive and inured to hardship, proficient at staying alive where others cannot, and aloof from your fellow man. Upon death worlds, plants, beasts, and sometimes even the environment itself takes aggressive and destructive forms inimical to human life. While most exceptionally difficult to colonize, many death worlds possess valuable resources that require an outpost or other human presence upon the planet's surface to harvest. Death world is often band together in tribes, clans, gangs, or other social groups in order to survive. But upbringing in such a harsh environment breeds very hardy and resilient examples of the human race. Those tested and found wanting die young. Death worlds, what's not common within the Imperium, can be found in every segmentum, from the depth of the jungle hell of Catachan to the predator-filled deserts of Luther McIntyre. Death worlds are a well-earned reputation as some of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. The inhabitants of these worlds are determined, tenacious people, highly valued for strength and stamina, and are often drawn upon as recruits for both the Imperial Guard and some Space Marine chapters. For most Death worlds, their inhabitants are their only exports. Death worlds vary widely in appearance and environment. Some are rich in verdant, stocked by ambulatory carnivorous plants, while others are empty deserts scorched by ionic storms. Each death world presents 1,000 new and different ways to die, such as the scythe winds of Mortessa or the corrosive alkaline storm mires of Burnscour. Those unlucky enough to be raised on Death World are generally pragmatic and fatalistic. Death is a constant companion, and only by achieving that can a Death Worlder hope to reach maturity with sanity. Only by accepting that can a Death Worlder hope to reach maturity with his sanity intact. Usually, the greatest achievement of a Death Worlder can strive for is to achieve some truly impressive feat before his death, so he will be remembered by his descendants. If a Death Worlder eventually makes it off-world, he is likely to view distant worlds with jaded eyes. After all, he's already seen the worst the galaxy has to offer, and for surely nothing can exceed the horrors of his birth world. So that's a thing. There's also another, most likely, let's see, this. Oh, hi, new viewers. I don't see the viewer count accurately. I've known that it's been occasionally known to lie to me. So, if you are new, welcome. My name is Lee. She, her vibes today, but here they is fine. We are doing Warhammer 40k world building today. So if you have any questions, comments, anything, put them in the chat. I love to talk to people in the chat. Just say hi. I am building a ship called the Experius Primus in the Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader role-playing game. And I have created all... sorry, it's this way. No, it's the other... I have to remember about pointing on screen. It never quite works. Yeah, so one of our characters, Xyle. Hi! Aw, I hope you have a great day too. No worries. Hopefully my voice is soothing for the background. We're coming up with a Death World, which is kind of interesting. Lots of fun. So I read the spiel about him. So I'm thinking, let's see what we got. There's another section on Death World as well that I didn't realize existed because I Um, was trying to get to another section of the book. Yes, I know I didn't read the book cover to cover. It's 401 pages, actually, to be fair. But I'll see if I can find that as well, because that might... Imperium and space travel. Here we go. They have a whole list of different types of battle fleets and things. But I don't know, it was a little higher up, I think. In any... Oh, Research Station Hive Worlds. Here we go. Feudal Worlds. Planets of the Imperium are diverse as the galaxy itself, so we can basically do whatever. Forge Worlds. Death Worlds. Mankind has ever found the galaxy strewn with worlds with minimal, even non-existent life traces, yet possessing clear signs of once having harbored civilization. This often appears to be the result of ecological catastrophe or devastating... Dead Worlds, not Death Worlds. That's Dead Worlds. Dead Worlds are also interesting. Yeah. Death Worlds are planets which are too dangerous to support widespread human settlement. The environments vary from worldwide jungles, harboring carnivorous plants and animals, to barren rockscapes strewn with volcanoes and racked by iron. Ooh, volcanoes. I never even thought of that. I was going to do poisonous pollen storms. Nearly impossible to colonize, but... must be properly explored, which necessitates a provision of outposts and other facilities. Some harbor rich mineral, vegetable, animal, and gaseous resources, and the Imperial Guard greatly values troops raised on these harsh places. I'm going to say that Zyle's homeworld does not have anything have anything extremely valuable. There is a planet a few systems over that research station. Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the Adeptus Mechanicus research stations does occasionally rely on food and occasionally other resources. From the planet below. So that's cool. So, okay, so we got the Mechanicus Research Station. That actually makes sense. So, yeah, that's why. And otherwise fairly feudal. I'm going to say, otherwise, the population of the planet itself is fairly feudal, rather low tech. Not feudal low tech, but, let's see, how feudal, how, refers not to a political system, but to the entire Imperium's, administration, for the entire Imperium administration, is administered according to a feudal system. Actually, it is. It's, it is actually, to be fair, part of a feudal system. Feudal dictatorship, which doesn't make any sense, but somehow works. But instead, just prior to or just post Black Powder. This may be the case because the planet has been cut off by the warp storms for many centuries and regressed in the meantime, or society might be rebuilding following long periods of war or some other form of planet-wide disaster. In general, the Imperium will allow such worlds to progress at their own pace, and it may be centuries until feudal world progresses to a level similar to the bulk of the Imperium. Okay, so technically it's between civil and a feudal world. So this is, civilized worlds are generally self-sufficient, possess starports, and are able to defend themselves against most threats they might be expected to face. Most of these worlds are further categorized as cardinal worlds, garden worlds, mining worlds, or any of their thousand classifications. Right. So it's low tech. I'm gonna say it's not feudal in the sense. I don't know if there's anything lower than feudal worlds, because I know some worlds are just agri, research, hive. No. Interesting. Alright, so it's fairly low tech. I wouldn't, because certain civilized worlds are not feudal worlds, but don't have a lot of tech. Yet technology in the Imperium is not evenly distributed among the various worlds. All built from cast-off scrap of old research. I'd say ionic. So severe monsoons. I'm gonna say severe monsoons and flooding along the equatorial areas. Because the whole thing is, while the Warhammer 40k tends to glomp planets together, different planets do have different ecosystems in different parts of the planet. It's some even have full-on countries that interesting. So my iced tea is sitting right next to the the fan output for my computer, and it makes the tumbler really warm on the outside. It's still cold on the inside because it's insulated, but the computer isn't heating up as much, so I think that's a good thing. And it's acting as a heat sink, which is interesting. But what I was explaining was, here, let me also look back, not that one. But what I was explaining was, planets are not, well, actually, if it was a higher ocean percentage warming, with a lot of greenhouse gas, naturally thicker than Earth's atmosphere, I mean, we're already seeing severe flooding in parts of the, I mean, it makes sense, especially if the droughts were in colder areas. So severe, I'm going to say severe monsoon flooding. That alone isn't enough to make it a death world, but it is certainly a natural hazard they'd have to deal with. What about ion vent? Like, ooh, that would be good. So, if there's volcanic vents that release toxic gas, right? Which is something interesting for the research station to weaponize and um, 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 uh, yeah, severe monsoon flooding. Okay, so we have on top of the toxic vents. You're being weird. Sorry, McVenner is being weird. I mean, he's a good fish and I love him, but sometimes he's a little. Maybe I should have named him Larkin, actually, now that I see him, how he acts, but that's okay. Um, he's a good fish, and, what was I going to say? I need to get him another plant, is what I need to get him. But that's a whole other thing. Yeah, so the through monsoon flooding, then toxic volcanic vents. Also, extreme heat. Um, I mean, yeah, there's it regularly, yeah, extreme heat, constant floodings, um, yeah, regularly getting to, say, 100 or, let's see. Oh, hi. Yes, we are talking about Rogue Trader. Welcome to my channel. My name is Lee. She, her vibes today, but here they is fine. We are talking about Rogue Trader. I am coming up with a ship for called the Experius Primus. And I don't know if you're familiar with the game, but what we have here, let me show it off because this is really cool. The origin path is what we have for, here, let me poke here so you can see me. The origin path, I rolled randomly to create several characters for Rogue Trader. Started with a D6 for Homeworld, and then I've been going down the chart to using a D3 or evens odds when you got to the edge. And yeah, which Zael actually did because I started with a Death World. I rolled a 1, he's from a Death World. So essentially, let me pop that. So yeah, so essentially I've been creating these characters. I don't know how familiar you are with Warhammer 40k lore, but I am. So I've created several characters on the ship together. 2 Archmilitants, a Mechanicus, Press Gang Mechanicus, Explorator, and a Voidmaster, who was also Press Ganged at a young age from a hive world. But actually from the same hive world because of the way I rolled it. And so I built up Viseria, which is the planet they're from. And so I was thinking, and I figured out a little bit from the ship Odette was from, the other Archmilitant. So I was thinking, well, okay, I have a character from Death World. I wanted to create this Death World. So I've been working on building up this Death World. I do world building as my passion, and Warhammer 40k is a rich ground for world building because there are so many planets in the Imperium that it's impossible to catalog them all. So it's really easy to create a planet, and then how does it connect to the greater Imperium? How does it fit into the system? And Zael's home planet does. It doesn't have a lot of extremely valuable resources, but it does have some interesting flora and fauna and toxic vents that are not good for humans. So, right, extreme heat, toxic volcanic vents. Oh, and monsoon flooding. Except in the deserts. So basically, it's either deserts or floodplain. Like there is no in between. Um, it has a much thicker atmosphere. Yeah, that can stay on there. It has a much thicker atmosphere than Earth, with uh, high methane content. And the humans that are not immune to the toxic venting. So what happens is they have to harvest crops because otherwise there's nothing. They have to filter the monsoon water or pipe it into the desert, build these rickety. I mean, no one really lives out in the desert. The human population clusters are all in the monsoon areas, so, and it's a handful of clans uh, with constant flooding and extreme heat, and um, there are certain mushrooms that grow that are good to eat and have reasonable protein levels. So, yeah, so these mushrooms are basically the sole. Of course, there are also poisonous mushrooms, so knowing how to be able to distinguish them is key to making this work. Um, there are also trees that are uh, specifically, I guess, aquatic. Like they're the kind of trees that on Earth would grow in swamps. Um, you've got um, yeah, you got the kind of slow draining rivers into ocean. Um, yeah, the slow draining rivers into the ocean. There's um, kind of there's one main continent. Actually, I'm fascinated by this planet, the world building on this, so I'm gonna go into it. Let's do this. Um, uh, aquatic trees. You got fish, also swampy, slow moving rivers that drain into the ocean. Um, the the planet is has these mountains, right? Basically, there is one main continent, and it has a ring of mountains that kind of trap um, the uh, um, the water, so or the clouds, uh, trap clouds. Also, this is where all the vents are. That's how you spell clouds. That's where the vents come from. So there's also the polar caps, but nobody really goes up there. So yeah, it's got one main continent. It's mostly water. That's why there's so much flooding, is because the clouds get trapped. The dry air comes from the desert on the center of the continent. There are desert tribes, but that have there's a whole history of that. it's complicated. um, well, but basically you got um, the um, you got the coastal areas are the most populated because that's where anything grows or lives. There are certain creatures and plants that survive in the desert from the little bit of water that tends to come through, but few and far between. um, and there's a um, unique gas that gets um, put out by the volcanic vents, and the humans here have lived here long enough, enough generations that they can smell this gas. It's like a canary in a coal mine kind of thing. They're sensitive to it in a way that regular humans from off planet are not. So they basically get, you start to smell the gas. There's mass panics. Everyone gets to shelter underground and puts the filter, you know, closes it over, and you're stuck with whatever air supply you have. So homes tend to be large, mostly underground structures to kind of create as much air space as possible when you seal them off. They do have oxygen, but it was settled mistakenly during the dark age of technology and ended up regressing, and there were a lot of times built before oxygen tanks, and a lot of people don't have them. Very rich, those who are very rich, who have the closest connection with the research station, tend to have uh, um, like portable oxygen masks or gas masks or gas masks, oxygen masks, like oxygen tanks, like stuff like that they can just put on and have houses with, completely airtight seals and, oxygen pumps. Those who are not so wealthy, which is the vast majority of the population, uh, unpredictable. They tend to be unpredictable as well. So they just have these moments where everything is on top of the extreme heat and the flooding. They have the volcanic vents that just, and if you notice one's coming, you have to stop whatever you're doing and get to the nearest shelter and shelter in place. I mean, some of the smarter can time it, but it's always a risky move, and this is what makes it such a death world. This is our death world. Okay, so we got this going. Yes, so it's unpredictable. Sorry, my hair looks terrible, actually. I just realized that. I'm not going to worry too much about it. But, unpredictable, need shelter. Most, poor, residents, mostly underground, that are proportionally very large. Kind of like the Australian town of Coober Pedy. I don't know if you've heard of that, which I think Australia is the closest Earth has to a death world, essentially. Um, and a lot of death world vibes are based on, well, Australia. Um, but the um, uh, yeah, so proportionally very large, and they do have sensitivity to other toxic gas, trace amounts of other toxic gases, which actually makes them very valuable additions to other units of Imperial Guard troops. So the Imperial Guard, on occasion, local Imperial Guard will try to either raise regiments from there, or what they'll do is they'll press gang locals. They'll demand a draft of locals to help with the efforts of to put them as basically chemical detectors, like drug sniffing dogs, or someone who can like a canary. Like coal mines had the canaries, they die first so that everyone knows to get out of the mine. That's various unscrupulous businesses will, because their natural uh, attunement to toxic gases has evolved over the generations. Um, People, locals from this planet are, and not every local. There's some of them are, can't smell it, but it's considered a severe disability, and they tend to die young. Um, those with that particular mutation. Not always. Sometimes they survive, and that's how we get more. But yeah, they tend to die young, and they're a very slight minority. Um, um, yes, what was I going to say? Proportionally very large to and seal, because there's no, once they're sealed off, there's no air supply. So yeah, no air supply. So they want as much as possible. So wealthy locals have gas masks and right, so they have that. So but yeah, so any kind, when you're in enclosed spaces constantly and unpredictably, anyone with kind of any kind of neurodivergence or less than perfectly sane neurotypical personality tends to probably be disliked among the community. And when the draft comes up, of course they're the first ones to get shoved out and say, "Here you go." Um, and so let's see. I still don't know what this world's called. If anyone in the chat has any suggestions, Kirsten, you can name this planet if you want. Let's see. I don't know what to call it, but if not, I can ask around on other forums and maybe try to think of something. But oxygen pumps, right? So wealthy locals need shelter. Going too far is they can't go too far. So yeah, their main export is the mushrooms, and they have mushrooms and fish and gatherers. Okay, so locals grow cultivate and forge for moss, which they use for various And that is why there's, you're going to try to get as much moss and fish, but you also don't want to go too far because, live in small community warrens. I mean, I guess they are kind of warrens. I mean, you could think of them as hobbit holes or underground shelters, but they're kind of, communal warrens with, with a lot of space, which is good actually. Because the extra space you're not using would be a very interesting dynamic. Alright, so we got this going on. Sorry. My bruise is itchy. Um, yeah. My arm's actually getting less bruised up. It's mostly my legs now. In small, well, okay, relatively large, proportionally large, but small community warrens, with tight-knit extended family, sorry, it's my stomach, I don't know if you can hear it, but, they got the tight-knit extended family, and, tight-knit extended family, what else? Sorry. Dotted about the coast areas. Check your water out. Actually, I didn't yesterday, so probably should today. Anyway, I was gonna say, yes, so you have the coastal areas, the other stuff. Yeah, coastal area of the continent. Nearby, warrens. That's what they called, actually. I mean, technically they're clans, but honestly, you can call your community groups whatever you want, right? And if you call them warrens, that makes some sense, some semblance of sense. If you live in boroughs like that, and so nearby warrens often trade, and let's see, how does the trade with them? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to figure out how trade with mechanic gets research outpost would work. Swap people. Both it's a genetic diversity thing and just generally, to form alliances and such. All right. I feel like for marriages, so I'm going to trade with those okay, so yes. That's it. Okay, is the research station is facilitated by a handful work with the and often marry. Okay. That is we have a social structure. We have a complete planet. I just got to figure out what the name is. If anyone has suggestions, drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I think that's the stream for today. I know it's a rather short one, but I usually don't do particularly long streams. And yeah, perhaps there's some tribes in the desert. I might go revisit that later. But next time I'm doing Rogue Trader, I'm going to do more character creation. So that's exciting. Yeah, I do plan to use. I'd like to figure out a way to showcase the crew of the Experimus Primus at some point. Not just expand on their lore, but we'll see how we can do that. Thank you for watching my stream. I really appreciate it. And tomorrow at what's tomorrow? Yeah. So tomorrow at, let me check my schedule. This is important. Another 11:30 stream, but this one's going to be Pathfinder. So I know some of you like Pathfinder better than Rogue Trader. So we're going to do another 11:30 stream. Probably a little longer. We're going to do Pathfinder, character creation. I have a few ideas. Pathfinder creation, character creation / world building. I'm thinking character creation, and then yeah, I set up my schedule for the week, and I also keep screwing that up. Yeah, I set up my schedule for the week and said I was going to do character creation, and yeah, so we'll do character creation, maybe a little bit of world building, as I put together some of my many Pathfinder characters. Yeah, it's always a good time, and hopefully, I know this is an awkward time for a lot of people, but hopefully we have some fun people come, and thank you so much for coming. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you. Also, all my streams are available on YouTube, if you want. I tend to put them up there. LeeC123 is the YouTube. It's the same one as Discord. And it's just, you know, all the streams in case you ever are bored and, you know, want to kill something or have something to put on in the background. I am there. So, okay. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow or whenever you can catch a stream.